we're going to try this, but it appears as though YouTube is blocking the stream, so you may have lots of buffering. I just ask that you hang in there, because this is going to be one of the most important videos that have ever been published on this channel. Now, I wanted to do a dedicated show on this because it deserves your full attention. And also today we're going to be looking at that they put together on the Mr. T arrow symbolism. Now, when I say Mr. T, I'm referring to, of course, the president. Now, I thought that this document that they submitted was really neat. Here I'll pull some images up of it. This is it here. We're going to get into this document a little bit later in the show. Now, as bitten, we're going to call him, and of course I'm talking about the elect president, as he begins to repackage Mr. T's bipartisan agenda into his own to make it look like he came up with it himself, we will begin to break him down as well. And we'll be doing a lot less work on Mr. T. And already, you guys have heard, Bitten is trying to claim the fame for the $2,000 stimulus idea. But don't get caught up in the hype of who's taking credit for what, because all of that is part of the Hall of Mirrors. It's part of the matrix to keep you on one side or the other. It's meant to stoke rage and anger toward one side or the other. So don't get caught up in that. Of course, Mr. T came up with it first, and everybody knows that. But by Bitten saying that, this is his idea now and he's going to push this through, it's just part of the game. It's part of it. Now, there was a great film called Oblivion that starred Tom Cruise, and I believe that this is a great example of the right-left paradigm. And what happened was Tom Cruise in the movie Oblivion was told this cover story by his boss, who he only had access to through a monitor, and he had to check in with her every day. And the lie was that the world was to patrol a single sector of the world. That sector was was given to him. He took great pride in his patrol efforts, did exactly what he was never to go outside of his patrol sector. And his boss controlled him through fear and through the right-left paradigm. And she kept posing these catastrophic scenarios to him if he didn't do his job. It made him believe that the entire world was counting on him to patrol his sector and make sure everything was copacetic. And he got a wife in the deal. He had a bomb apartment in the clouds with his own helipad that he would land his little copter thing on. This is it here. He had everything he wanted, but something was missing. And he knew something was missing. And he began to see these clues that something was not right. So, one day he decided to break the rules and go outside of his silo or his sector. And when I talk about a silo, I'm talking about a grain silo, those big towers that they store grain in. And that's a great example of how the right-left paradigm works. Having us stuck in a silo or one mode of thinking, having us stuck in a paradigm that we can't see outside of. We can't see the next silo. It's too. And as Tom Cruise broke the rules and went outside of his silo, he began to find answers. And his clone was doing the exact same thing that Tom Cruise was doing in his sector, following his rules. The only thing that separated the two was their number. Are you starting to see what's happening now? Well, as Tom Cruise starts to figure it all out, they want to take him out because things begin to unravel and their little secret is out. And if all the other clones get wind of what's happening, crashing down. What's the truth in the film? The truth is that aliens, and to continue to harvest the resources like a vampire harvesting the resources off the planet, they had to clone Tom Cruise 1,000 times as the perfect super soldier. And they set him out all across a grid pattern across the world as like a sentry, a guard. And his job was to root out any remaining underground human survivors. They chose him because he looked just like the human survivors. And so this was his job. And so that's us. We are Tom Cruise. We do our jobs, we follow our rules under a false paradigm of fear. We're told a lie that the two sides are at odds with one another at the top, when really the two sides are one. They're putting on a charade to control all of us. Now, today's show will demonstrate the continuity of the lie going back at least to 1939 that we could find, which is the World's Fair. And we're going to demonstrate that everything that Mr. T came to do was planned from the beginning. Now, our journey begins with the 1939 World's Fair. The fair featured the Trilon and Perisphere. Here it is right here. Basically what it was a ball and a needle. Let's go back this way. Let me show you this. The Perisphere was a ball and needle. And that ball and needle was called the Perisphere and the Trilon. The Trilon is a needle, Perisphere. And of course, we then discovered that the Trilon was a real needle. This is it right here from the 1960s, June 1966 to be exact. This is a glass hypo needle. Here are some vintage images of it in the box. So now we know that when they named this thing the Trilon, we knew now what they're really after. Now I'm going to, just for documentation's sake, got to show documentation, right? Because naysayers will come. This is their job, is to come. I just want you to understand that this is the name of the needle. It's called the Trilon, which is named after a needle. Now, the needle hadn't existed, the hypo needle had not existed when this was built, but later it did confirm it. Let's scroll down here. There were actually publications that named it as well. Search on that, but that's the case. Okay. Oh, here it is right here. Boom. So this is from the cover of a magazine, and there you see the word Trilon. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, this same ball and needle was immortalized in this family real estate empire billboard for Mr. T's family. And of course, this was present at the World's Fair. The fair was themed the world of tomorrow. Pretty interesting, right? Now, what we surmised that this was all about in 1939 was the coming, I'm going to call it Apollio VC that would emerge a few years later. You see, the world was in the midst of a spamdemic, an Apollio spamdemic. And the 1940s marked the rise of the Apollio VCs to treat this spamdemic. Now, I call it Apollio for good reason. Apollio is the god who brings disease with his arrows. I'm going to make sure we're connected before we keep going here. And it appears as though you guys are having lots of buffering problems. Hang in there with me. Apollo is the bringer of disease with his arrows, similar to the function of the Vedic god disease, Rudra. He sends a plague to the Archaeans. God who sends a disease can also prevent it. Therefore, when it stops, they make a purifying ceremony and offer him a hecatomb to ward off evil. When the oath of his priests appeases, they pray, and with a song they call their own god Paon. Now, I'll put a link to this in the pinned comment. Obviously, they don't want you to know this information because unbelievable. I've never had this problem before. Actually, had it one time before, but I don't know what's going on. I don't know. But let's keep going with this. Let me find that tab here. Now, that was in 1964 is when they built the Unisphere. We covered that in depth. Mr. T then had a third replica of the Perisphere built 20 years ago in front of Columbus Circle T International Hotel. Now, here is the Unisphere in 1964-65, and then Mr. T says no fan of globalism. Obviously he is. Like this one world tribute so much that he later commissioned a smaller replica to stand in front of his T Tower in New York. This was actually in front of the International Columbus Circle. Here it is right here. Columbus Circle Globe, they call it. Here it is right here at the foot of T International. I wonder what's up with this building. I hadn't looked into this yet, so we might find a surprise here, an Easter egg, in the number of floors that this has. Looks like this construction started in 68, finished in 95, 97, 177 meters tall, 44 floors. That's half of 88. Biff, Back to the Future, right there. Now, we'll dig into that later. That wasn't originally going to be part of the show, but I always like to look at the makeup of these buildings because they encode everything you need to know. Now, let's keep going with this, because this confirms our suspicions about the continuity going back to 1939 and the polio spamdemic. We had 3 globes: Perisphere, Unisphere, and globe. Now, remember, this 1939 World's Fair was the foreshadowing of the worldwide polio VC program, and that's why it featured the hypo needle. And Mr. T grew up just yards away from this World Fair site in Queens, also known as Flushing Meadows and Crona. This World Fair happened right before he was born, and this tells me that maybe his father was the origin of all of this to create the venom to pierce America. Now, here's where things get weird. Because Mr. T had the Columbus Circle globe you're looking at right here built exactly 33 years after the 1964 World's Fair in 1997. I'm sorry, 1997 was when this globe was completed. And that was 33 years after the 1964 World's Fair. And as we said in yesterday's show, the year 1997 that Mr. T commissioned this globe is the HEBREW year, calendar year, 5757. Let's look that up. Now, you're not allowed to say that word on YouTube. This world has gone off the rails. I can't even believe where we've come to where we're spelling words like a child. There it is right there. The books have been burned. So we'll pop off of that. Now, let's keep going with this because we know that T Tower, the original T Tower, not this one, is on 57th Street. And 57 looks like 5 gee whiz. That's what it is alphanumerically. Now, we also know that T Tower looks like a cell phone signal bars. Now, how can this be? Considering the fact that T Tower was made in 1983, which, by the way, 83 is the sum of several 19-year cycles. Let's see, let's pull up the calculator here. Because 83 divided by 19. Oh, no, it's not. Sorry. It's 38, which is the opposite of 83. 19 and 19 is 38. Now, here is a cell phone signal. When 1983, did we have cell phones? No, we did not. And notice how there are five bars. That's 5G whiz. Now watch this. This is the floor plan for T Tower. Where is it? It looks like cell phone signal bars. Oh, it's here. This is we're going to get more into this here, but here's a good image of it here. Here you can see the cell phone signal bars of T Tower. Now this forms a twin with this other one here. This is the IBM building. We'll get into this document at the end of the show. But I wanted to show you how this is cell phone signal bars. So all of this was orchestrated. Now let's keep going with this. Let's go back to here. And again, apologies if you're buffering. Something's going on with YouTube and streaming right now. So here is where things get really weird. Because every 19 years since the 1939-1940 World's Fair have inched us closer to Mr. T's plan. So, after 3 19-year cycles, after 1940, because remember the World's Fair went 1939 and 1940. So let's start with the 1940, and we'll start adding 19-year cycles to it. So after 3 19-year cycles, after 1940, he built the Columbus Globe. To the day, 1997, that opened. 3 19-year cycles since 1940. And then 19 years after 1997 was 2016. And everybody knows what that date is. That's the date that he became president. Now, if you use the 1939 opening of the World's Fair and you count 19-year cycles, something very bizarre emerges. I'm going to do a visual on this so you can see this here. Let's do calculator. Now I'm being careful what I say because YouTube is on the prowl right now. Okay, let's start with 1939. Let's add 19 years. That equals 1958. Remember the 58 stories at T Tower, the 58 bedrooms at the Mar-a-Lago mansion. He's won the 58th election, the 1958 Trackdown episode, in which a man named TRUMP built a WALL, and it goes on and on and on. Quantum Leap episode set in 1958 on T's mother's birthday, in which he appears as a 12-year-old boy. He was 12 in 1958. Now let's add another 19 years. That brings us to another T number, which is 77, 1977. And you guys all know the 77 matrix surrounding him. Now, we're going to get into some of these articles. But before we do that, we also link the T family billboard to Back to the Future. Remember that? We did this yesterday. So this all connects. Here's a great image of the cell phone signal. There are 5 in the middle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I wonder if this was about the ushering in of 5 Jews. Now, let's get into some of these articles here very quickly. Now, this one talks about the T globe, global unity. This was dated 2014. The steel globe located in Manhattan, Columbus Circle, at the intersection of 8th Avenue, Broadway, Central Park, South, Central Park, West, in front of the T International Hotel. It was built in 97, which is what we already covered, during the revamping of the T Tower and something called the Monument, and sometimes called the Monument to the World. Its structure shows the world made up of steel and is at least 30 feet wide and is held by one huge chromium column. The globe is surrounded by 3 rings orbiting it. In front of the globe, there are large crowds trying to take the subway and get to their destination. The Unisphere, located at Flushing Meadows, inspired the globe. Because of that, it is a symbol of global interdependence and community. The globe symbolizes the coming together of people from all over the world to achieve a common goal. Is this all sounding familiar? And to share in the common purpose. Its rings memorialize the tracks of Yuri Gagarin, the first man in space, John Glenn, first American in space, and the first communications satellites. Man's ascension into the space was only accomplished through a myriad of collaborative efforts. Of course, we know most of that is a hoax. However, and we know this globe is a hoax too. However, because of its location in NYC, globe takes on a different meaning entirely. Lying at the heart of the city, the monument to the world is representative of NYC itself. Because of its intense diversity, the world that the globe symbolizes can be found within the confines of this great city. Within its boundaries, people from every corner of the globe can be found. As such, we chose the steel globe because it represents the diversity of NYC. So, unbelievable. Let's look at this other article. 20 years ago, the Columbus Circle Globe. So he tried to put his name on it. These days, New Yorkers going to great lengths to get T name off their buildings, and even his company itself has personally shed his moniker from their hotel brand amid declining bookings. But back in the 80s and 90s, D would freely slap his name on just about everything he wanted. That was until 96 when Giuliani denied his request to brand the globe outside of the T International Hotel. Now, it's funny because him and Giuliani are buddies now up until a couple days ago when T threw him under the bus. So here's the T International Tower. The condo was completed in 97, converting a drab office tower to a glassy beacon at the intersection of Columbus Circle. The year prior, the huge silver globe in front of the building was being planned, and T wanted the 30-foot wide piece modeled on the 1964-65 World's Fair Unisphere in his childhood borough of Queens, to be adorned with a 3-foot high lettering reading T International. So 30 feet wide, 3-foot high lettering. There's another 33. 33 years after the 1964 World's Fair. But if you take a look at the globe today, all you see is the world's landmasses silhouetted on a spherical framework of latitudinal and longitudinal struts, encircled by 3 orbital rings, along with a small plaque on the base reading Brendel, Miami, for sculptor and designer Kim Brandel. I wonder what she's all about. Let's look her up real quick. Brandel, Miami, Kim Brandel. I haven't looked her up yet, so I wanted to do that. What? Sometimes they have things encoded in their birthdays. Brandel Perms. Okay, well, it doesn't look like she has a Wikipedia page, so we'll keep going with this. So, but when it came to NYC version, Richard Barth, then director of city planning, and Douglas Woodward, who was working on the redevelopment of Columbus Circle, wrote to the department that there is no question that the globe with lettering is a sign and is not a permitted obstruction. The T organization name on the front of this. Again, another article. This is New York Times. Pretty much the same story here. Now, here's where things get even more creepy. Because a subscriber put together some of these documents here. And this is basically the body of work. We're going to start with this document, and this is how we're going to end the show today. This is the tip of the sphere, the arrow of Apollo. And as you can see here, tacticians use the word tip of the spear. It refers to a force that is used to puncture the enemy's initial lines of defense, just like a needle. This is the tower, and look at what it's at the bottom, an arrowhead. Using 5G Whiz as an arrow to pierce the opponents. There's also an arrow at the Freedom. This is what this is. This is the Freedom building in NYC. And of course, needle. And this is Mr. T's Academy picture. And these are portals. As you can see here, it says men have passed through these portals. Right here, under an arch of triumph is what these are called. Archways are called arches of triumph, which sounds like TROUMP. And who is at the front of the class? Who is at the tip of the spear? It is Mr. T. So good job on that. Both and all presidents are involved in this, as we demonstrated with the illustration talking about the film Oblivion. And the subscriber put this together really well because he talked about the O-Man signing the beam on June 14th, which was DT's birthday. O-Man signed the beam for the giant needle in the sky in Lower Manhattan, the Freedom building, on June 14th, which was the Don's birthday. Great job on that. Now let's look at this other one here. This also demonstrates the Serpent Man. Now that we also realize that the Apollo's arrow was really the serpent coming out of the chest. And so what this is the IBM building, which forms a twin pair, which looks a lot like the Superman logo. And Let's see here. A lot of good stuff here. I'd like you to go ahead and post this on the Facebook group, if you can find a way to do that. Here's the pair of buildings right here. And this is the IBM building. This is the T-Man Tower. And they are connected by an atrium together. They share an atrium. You can walk right across from one to the other. And we won't get into all that, but you guys can see that for yourself. Now, we're going to end the show with this. And I hope you're sitting down, because this brings us all full circle. The arrow of Apollo brings disease, and then he cures it. And now this billboard makes all the sense in the world. Now, if you're still in denial, maybe this will finally get through to you. This is on Mr. T's penthouse mantle. The entire penthouse is decked out in Apollo, but we're going to focus on this specific Apollo painting. Now, this is a famous painting. As you can see here, this is the painting of Apollo. This isn't the one on his mantle, but you can see the similarities in the painting. It is an Apollo painting. In fact, it's an archetype. The horses, the crowd of people, Apollo riding up here at the top, as you can see here. And phosphorus is right here. Phosphorus is the morning star. Lucifer, the light bearer. And in the front here is Aurora, the goddess of the dawn. Phosphorus, Aurora, Apollo. Now, what does all this mean? Now, don't get it twisted. Jesus is also called the morning star. There are two morning stars, the devil and Jesus. How do I know this? Because the book of Job says that there were multiple morning stars when there was unity in heaven and when they all sang together. So don't let people tell you that Jesus is Lucifer, because he is not. He is the morning star, which means Lucifer, but there were multiple ones. So this is Phosphorus, also called Hesperus. Here she is right here, the morning star. And she's dumping out her whatever that is onto the earth. Hesperus, the dawn bringer, but also Aurora is the dawn as well. Isn't it interesting? That's his name. So when we look at all of this together, when we put together all the pieces, what it appears to me is that Apollo brought the illness and also the cure. I don't know what his role is. I believe that the cure is the illness. That's what I believe is what's happening here. And Apollo as a spirit. Let's go back in here and see how many of us were buffering. I don't know what's going on with YouTube, but that was the show I wanted to put together for you guys today. I'll put links to this in the pinned comment. Whoever sent me those, find a way to upload PDF versions of that to the Facebook group so everyone else can read them as well. Let's go into the chat. It looks like a lot of you were able to stay on. And again, apologies for the... This is unbelievable. Now, to this day, I still get people asking me if I'm a Democrat. Say it any more clearly than I need to be saying it. That basically, no, absolutely not. We do not exist in the right-left paradigm. I've repeated it in many, many shows, but I think that's more of an attack. It's more of people trying to figure out a way to slander the information, to try to make it sound like we're coming after Trump. No, you just wait. Bitten will continue the same thing. It's coming. I know it's buffering explain why that was happening. Okay, so I'm going to end the show here because obviously we're having a lot of problems. Hopefully things are better tomorrow. I have a feeling that going into this, christening in of Benton, that this is only going to get worse. And this may be the shape of things to come. This could be a regular thing as they try to silence us revealing to the world what is really going on, and both sides are working together. Now, tomorrow's show, we will talk about the shame ritual that is happening right now. Everybody that put on a T-shirt and a hat have now become targets of the shame ritual that will begin to slowly root out every single person with conservative and moral values. It's coming and it's happening right now, and Mr. T won't do a thing about it because the whole thing was a setup. It was to just duck call, to draw you out of the woods, and it worked. And you wore the hat, and you wore the T-shirts,
I didn't.
and you wore all the merchandise. While he was making millions off of that, he was marking you for later problems. And we'll talk about those problems and what the people who stood up for God and all those things and thought they were doing the right thing, what they're going to go through right now and what they're going through right now. Because everybody knows who they are, because they've been cruising around with hats and they've been having these lawn signs, right? So it's coming. They're going to come for you. And the left won't do anything about it. That's what's happening now. Circle the wagons. And you're going to see mass exoduses happening. Mass exodus. You're going to see right-leaning people leaving places in mass to go down to more conservative states, southern states, breadbasket states. You're going to see this. It's going to happen right now. You're going to see a huge shift as people begin to come under what I refer to as a reverse discrimination. This is what's going to happen to these people. And my heart goes out to you because you were tricked. You took the bait. You were tricked. And I'm sorry that happened to you. But now you got to realize what happened and tear off all that stuff. And because there's nothing behind it anymore. What use is it to you now? A relic? Stick it up in your attic or your basement. And it's time to understand what we're up against. And the exodus will ensue. And at that point, there's a chance. Because there's enough of us. As long as you don't get tricked by the right-left paradigm, there's enough of us that can create our own communities and rely on each other. It doesn't matter what color you are, and I hope that you don't believe that all black people are responsible for this, because they're not. There's a lot of black people out there like myself who understand how people are tricked and deceived and understand that most white people are good people and they don't care about your color.
Oh, there it goes. Okay.